everybody out there in LinkedIn or Facebook land. Welcome to another one of my Own Your Expertise interviews. I'm Emily Crookston, owner and decider of all things at the Pocket PhD. I'm the ghostwriter for Rebels, Renegades, and Mavericks, and I love helping experts with big ideas get those ideas out of their heads and into the hands of their fans. Today, I'm sitting down with Carol Hamilton. Carol is the principal at Grace Social Sector Consulting, and she helps nonprofits and associations enjoy strategic planning. Carol is also the host of the Mission Impact podcast. Carol, thanks for speaking with me. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about who you work with and what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, that's exactly it. I work with nonprofits and associations and helping them kind of being their, sheepdog along the way, sheepdogging the process for helping folks, organizations, groups get through a strategic planning process so that they can all come together, remember that they're all working towards the same goals and set some big priorities for themselves over the next couple of years and have a chance to have all those conversations that make sure that everyone, when we talk about everyone being on the same page, we try to get that strategic plan onto one page.
So how would you describe your path to becoming an expert?
Yeah, when we first started talking about this and I started thinking about it, it's definitely been a winding path. I think for most people in their careers, you look back and you can kind of make sense and say, okay, there's the through line, but as you're going through it, it doesn't feel like that. So I started out working at a for-profit organization, small business that helped people get on talk shows, and from that learned that I was, good at promoting causes, but then wanted to, if I was going to be doing that work, wanted to be doing it for things that really aligned with my values. And then over time, so started working in the nonprofit sector, and then over time just started to see a disconnect between the really ambitious and exciting missions that organizations had, for the change that they wanted to see in the world, in the wider world, but then a disconnect between that and their internal culture. So I got much more interested in kind of how do people do their work together, what makes a team work, what makes an organization work. And so that led me to then stumbling upon a field called organization development. And once I found that, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Tell us a little bit more about that work and what organization design is, for people who haven't heard of it.
Yeah, so organization development, it's a big, broad field, and there are actually many people who are probably doing it and don't call it that. But it's all the things that about how groups work together. It kind of comes out of study of group dynamics, social and organizational psychology, but really then applying it. So that applied practice, how teams work better together, how you can have thriving employee engagement.
I always like to ask this question. It comes, I think, from my background as a philosopher, but what is that one belief that, or several beliefs sometimes, what is that one belief that would, you would be willing to defend?
Yeah, I had to think a lot about this question because I feel like I've got opinions for miles, but die in the ditch belief, that's different. Yes. Right? Most of those opinions, probably not. A lot of them are probably not particularly considered. You push me on them, I'm willing to be flexible. But I think what I came down to were the two kind of anchoring principles as part of my faith tradition as a Unitarian Universalist: the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, and then the interconnectedness of all human and otherwise not just human existence, but all existence. And as I was thinking about that, it also really informs the work that I do, because what I want to invite organizations into is really having a very participatory process when they're going through strategic planning. So it's not about having a small subset of your board and your senior leadership getting in a room together and deciding this is our vision and why isn't everyone else excited about it? It's about how do you have a process that doesn't feel out of control or unmanageable, but really brings people in thoughtfully all the way through from the beginning, where you're talking to lots of folks and then helping that larger group make decisions that are going to define the way forward for the organization. And then, just helping them think through in terms of that interconnectedness, what's that wider ecosystem that they're sitting within? Who are all the different external stakeholders that they might want to think about? And then even, I think more and more thinking about what are the structures that they're working within that may or may not be supporting what they're trying to do in terms of our assumptions, our cultural norms, our assumptions in terms of how we do work and all of those kinds of things.
That's really interesting. So what does I don't know if there's a good answer to this, but what does your process look like when you work with a nonprofit?
So generally starting out with, we'll work with a smaller group, usually a strategic planning committee that decides, starts to do that kind of mapping of the stakeholders in that ecosystem, and then prioritizing, there's always some limits on these processes. So how many people, who am I going to talk to one-on-one? Who am I going to talk to in a focus group? Who might we, pull their input through surveys? And then once I've had all those conversations, I'll pull all of that together, synthesize it, and then share it with the group that's going to be doing the planning. And that's usually the board and the staff together. So going through those series of conversations that help them ultimately prioritize what are the three, no more than 5 big things that they're going to try to do over the next 3 to 5 years. And then also dig into, okay, so this is the vision. These are the big goals. How are we actually going to put those into action? Yeah. And then also having a conversation about how are we going to know that we made progress? What are the success criteria? What does success look like for us in each of these kind of action areas or strategic priorities? And some of them, they're all going to be the same. Some of them may be metrics. Some of them may be, we will have finished this report. We will have done this research, so there may be, we will have finished, revising all of our job descriptions. It could be lots of different ways that we would know that we've made progress, but having people set that out ahead of time is really important. And then the other thing that I like to do with groups is have them not only end with a plan, but to also have walk away with something that's called a strategy screen, which is really designed to help you deal with all those things that you couldn't have anticipated in the strategic planning process, and gives you, you've had a conversation about what are the criteria that we're going to use to make a decision. So it then becomes a tool to kind of sift through things that come, that come up inevitably. It's just as soon as you've hit, vote. We've voted on this plan, and then next week something happens that you couldn't have anticipated. This then is a way for you to have a conversation that doesn't just get swayed by the person who's bringing this initiative happens to be very influential on the board, or just a very persuasive person, but gives you a set of criteria that you can apply to lots of different situations.
Well, Carol, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. Why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you if they're curious?
All right. So, you mentioned that I'm the host of the podcast. So it's a Mission Impact podcast, and you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, or missionimpactpodcast.com. And then for my practice, it's gracesocialsector.com, Grace Social Sector Consulting. So those are 2 places you can find me, or on LinkedIn.
Great. Thanks so much, Carol.
Thank you.